I played two brilliant moves in my very first chess tournament. Now, they both happened in the first and last game respectively. Totally wild games. Unfortunately, the second game, it was a draw. The first game, however, I won in style. This was at the recent Sligo Chess Tournament 2024 here in Ireland. Here are the games.
In the first game, I was playing the white pieces, and I thought, my very first chess tournament, I may as well make it a wild one. So I started off with e4, e5, f4, King's Gambit. Now my opponent had very little idea of how to play against me, so he played something weird. Bishop d6, blocking in his d-pawn, no longer allowing bishop g4 in the future, which is very common. Now, moving on, bishop to c4, d4, attacking in the center, defending my pawns, defending everything nicely, and then my opponent makes a nice little mistake for me. Now, I missed this tactic at the time, but I still played pretty well. I had bishop takes, and if rook takes, then I play queen d5, attacking both rooks. Instead, I play queen d5, because I'm stupid. Alright, moving on. I'm attacking the rook on a8. His best move is to block, and then I'm attacking h5 at the same time. So he has to deal with both threats somehow. He plays c6, of course, it's the best move. I play queen h5 check, he can't block with the pawn or else he'll lose it. So he plays king to d8. Now after king to d8, I castle, moving on, and bam, he gives away a pawn. Now he blocks with the bishop, I take back, and then king takes. Now, look at this queen side. King is all the way exposed, knight has nowhere to go, and his bishop only has 2 squares. I play rook to e1, and what does he do? He plays bishop to a6. Giving up another pawn, I take on a5 pretty much immediately at this time. Now, he'd used very little of his clock, whereas I was utilizing every moment I could. He plays his king across, and now, my friends, I have my very first brilliant move of my very first classical chess game of my entire life playing in FIDE. Pause the video and see if you can find it before I show you. Yes, that's right, if you found it, you are a genius just like me. It is knight to b3, with the idea that if you take here, it's knight here, check, king goes back, here check, king there, and then after king there, check, queen there, check, you lose a rook, and eventually this can lead to checkmate. Alright, so now, after pawn d6, my opponent did not take the bishop. He knew a little bit better than that. I played bishop takes a6, rook takes, and then queen b4 check, still going ahead with the attack. He plays king a8, and here we have a lovely position where his king is trapped in the corner, his knight still has nowhere to go, and he has to play his queen across to free up his knight. But, my friends, this endgame is completely winning for me. There is very little he can do. That knight was pretty much a hindrance. Here I take on d6, rook slides across, and now it gives me all the time in the world. Play queen c3, he misses a tactic, he takes on a2, it looks like a free pawn, but I slide my rook across to d1 with the threat of forking both the queen and the knight with rook to d7. He misses it with queen b7, and I go rook d7, attacking both the knight and the queen, and from here he loses a knight, and eventually he loses the game. No, actually not yet, because actually after queen takes, he played there, I played there, and because I have some back rank issues, the knight's still covered a1. Moving on, he plays rook takes a2, and that was his final mistake, final nail in the coffin. I play queen d4 check, picking up a rook, and he actually resigned in this position. Now on to the next game. Now this one's a little bit trickier because I was playing as black and I didn't have any openings prepared whatsoever because I ain't gonna do none of that. Anyways, I decided I might trick my opponent by playing a Caro-Kann, but it looked like my opponent knew what he was doing, in contrast to me. So this game, I spent a lot of time. It was 3.5 hours long. Quite a fun chess game nonetheless. I played knight c6, typical Caro-Kann, and here I played queen b6, moving away from theory. He didn't know that though, so he played queen b3, and an inaccuracy. I allowed him to double my pawns, and so I could get some pressure on this e5 square. If you look, there are some attackers, and maybe if a bishop can slide across here, there will be another attacker. So I try to set up this attack on the e5 pawn, busting open the center. He tries to trap my bishop, thinking that I would fall for such an amateur trap of there, and I lose my bishop. So, haha, not gonna happen this time. So I play bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, bishop g7, preparing to castle and bring a rook across to push e5. Next thing you know, he castles, I castle, he brings rook to e1, and I go rook to e8. And now, my friends, the game is getting interesting. Don't forget he has bishop b5, pinning one of my knights, because if this knight was to ever take back on e5 after I push it, this one will be hanging. So, I play the tricky rook to a5, which is now actually revealed as an inaccuracy. Anyways, he plays a4. Weird. I couldn't understand this. But, you know, this actually gave me all the time in the world to play e5, but I didn't do it. I played e6, like a moron. But my opponent didn't care. He still played bishop to b5, and at this point in the game, it was an inaccuracy. Whereas before, it was a pretty good move. Now I played knight to f6, because I realized that my pawn structure is favored on the king side. I've only got doubled pawns with 3 of them against 4. On the queen side, it's pretty bad. So I said I'm going to reorient my entire attack to the king side, where I do have an advantage if you count the pawns. He didn't realize this. He thought there was still a manhunt for that e5 square, but no. He played rook a to d1. I played rook to c8, preventing this bishop move, which would have been pretty detrimental to me. I would have lost another pawn. He didn't see it. He goes knight back to d2, and here I release my rook from this pressure of b4 and play rook to a8. He plays rook to a1, knight across, and now he has weakened the c3 pawn. If you look, this is now a target. Knight back to c6, ignore that sound though, it's just windows. And bishop to, oh, he doesn't take with the bishop, sorry, he plays rook to c1 here. And now if you look, the knight and the rook are in line on the dark squares. So my immediate move was knight to h5. Knight to h5, dislodging this bishop. If bishop back to there, I push this pawn, and now I release this knight with loads of pressure on the center. Instead, he misses it and plays his first big mistake of the game, and that is bishop h2. And now look, I immediately play the bishop h6, skewering both the knight and the rook, and there is very little you can do to defend against this. If you play rook to there, I take with the knight, another great move, taking here, and then you lose a rook. If you do the same this way, then it's the exact same plan, you take and then you lose this rook. So he spots this, and he plays bishop takes c6, and now I take back with the rook, keeping the pressure on c3. Now, after rook to d2, I saw this as a free pawn. I may as well take the advantage while I have it. I take the knight on d2, rook takes, and then rook takes c3. Here, my friends, is where it gets really tricky, so prepare yourselves for a brilliancy. Okay, so now, pawn comes to a5, I take like an idiot. Pawn takes back, and now, if you would like to pause the video and see where the brilliancy is, I'll give you a moment. Moving on, the brilliant move of the very last game of my very first chess tournament is rook takes a5, sacrificing the rook! Rook takes here, and then this is back rank checkmate. So he cannot take the rook, because after here takes, I'll just show you the line. Here takes there, and then there. The king has no squares. So he does not take. He sees it. It is 3 hours into the game. Rook comes back to d1, and then I play the foolish rook to a3. Rook a3 takes, and then here I make a few mistakes, and eventually, this game was my biggest disappointment, because otherwise I would have scored top 3 in the tournament with 4 points. However, I scored, I'll show you in a second actually. I think I might have revealed it in the intro. So here I played this a couple of great moves in a row, which doesn't really mean much because the outcome of the game determines my performance, not the great moves. So I start pushing these pawns, and it's starting to look like a draw. In fact, that is exactly how the game started going from here on out. I had no advantage to take. I tried to create some kind of a zugzwang where he couldn't move his king anywhere, but he just played pretty solid chess with king to f1, and now if you look at it, there is a forced repetition. This pawn is not actually hanging. He can just push his king there, there, there. At this point, he did offer me a draw. I refused because I said I wasn't going to give up that easily. I looked at king to d6. King to d6 did not yield anything extra. Here, oh, apologies. Here, I played one check. He goes king to e2, and here we agreed to a draw, because here there is absolutely no way to create an advantage, and the computer even says 0-0. 3.5 hours into the game, we still found a brilliancy. That is what matters most. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.